The night the world decided to be quiet, a liminal, dreamlike sleep story, no one announced it. There was no global message, no sudden signal, no voice speaking through radios or screens telling people to pause. The night did not arrive with instructions. It arrived the way stillness sometimes does, quietly, patiently, without asking to be recognized. At first, it was only noticeable to those who were already paying attention. A woman standing at her kitchen window noticed that the traffic outside had thinned more than usual. A man sitting on a train platform realized the next train had not yet arrived, and he did not feel annoyed about it. Somewhere, a child stopped fidgeting and leaned into sleep without asking for a story. Across cities, towns, villages, and roads, the world began to soften, not stop. Soften. It happened gradually, as though the planet itself had taken a long breath and decided just for one night not to exhale. Too quickly, streetlights glowed steadily without flicker. The usual distant hum of engines faded into something gentler, something easier to ignore. Windows remained lit, but the light inside them felt warmer, less urgent, as though the rooms had agreed not to demand anything from the people inside. In one small town unremarkable, unnamed by most maps, the change was felt clearly. The town sat somewhere between two familiar places and belonged fully to neither. Its roads curved gently. Its buildings were practical, comfortable, and old enough to have learned patience. People lived there because they liked mornings that did not rush them and evenings that did not require explanation. On teas night, snow fell not everywhere in the world. But here, in this place, it did. The snow did not hurry. It drifted downward, as though gravity itself had agreed to be less persuasive. A man named Elias sat on a bench near the edge of the town square, his coat pulled close, his hands resting loosely in his pockets. He had stepped outside to clear his head, though he could no longer remember what he'd needed clearing from. The square was quiet, not unusually quiet at first. It's just a little more than expected. The clock tower nearby still stood tall, its face glowing faintly. The hands moved, marking time as they always had. Yet Elias noticed something strange. He could not hear the ticking. He leaned his head slightly, listening more carefully. Nothing. The clock was working. He could see it move, but the sound itself had disappeared into the night, as though the air had decided not to carry it. Elias didn't feel worried. That was the oddest part. He simply sat there, breathing, watching snow settle on the stone edges of the fountain that hadn't run in years. He thought briefly about checking his phone, then decided not to. It felt unnecessary. Across the street, a cafe window glowed softly. Inside, a woman wiped the counter slowly, though it was already clean. She wasn't trying to finish. She was enjoying the motion. The radio behind the counter played nothing, though it was still on. She noticed this and smiled faintly. Good, she whispered to no one. Far away, in a city where nights were usually loud and restless, something similar was happening. Traffic lights cycled normally, but fewer cars passed through them. A bus waited at a stop longer than usual. Doors open, engine quiet. No one complained. No one checked the schedule. A man walking home from work realized his footsteps sounded softer, as if the pavement itself had learned how to absorb sound more kindly. He slowed down without deciding to. He felt tired, but not the kind of tired that demanded collapse, the kind that asked for rest. Above the city, clouds drifted slowly, stretched thin like brushed cotton. The sky did not feel heavy. It felt spacious. The night was making room. In apartments, lamps stayed on longer than usual. People sat without scrolling. Hands rested. Thoughts drifted instead of looping. Somewhere, a television turned itself off, not abruptly, but gently, as if the room had suggested it. In the small town again, Elias stood from the bench and walked home. His footsteps left shallow impressions in the snow, which softened almost immediately behind him. The path he walked seemed to erase itself politely. He passed houses with curtains half drawn, light spilling through in calm rectangles. He saw people inside them, reading, some resting, some simply sitting and looking into nothing in particular. Everyone seemed to be doing less and feeling better for it. When Elias reached his front door, he paused, hand on the handle. The world felt balanced, as though something invisible had been set down carefully instead of dropped. Inside, his house greeted him with familiar quiet. He hung his coat, placed his keys in their usual bowl, and stood for a moment in the hallway without moving. The silence did not press against him. It held him. He sat on the couch and leaned back, exhaling slowly. The room felt warmer than before, though the thermostat hadn't changed. His breathing found a deeper rhythm. Outside, snow continued to fall. Elsewhere in the world, far beyond Elias's town, the same thing was happening in different ways. In a desert, the wind paused between gusts. In a forest, animals moved more slowly, more carefully. On a ship at sea, the water settled into a gentler pattern. The night was not commanding silence, it was inviting it. People who were awake noticed first. People who were asleep responded next. Dreams became simpler, less symbolic, more like sensations floating, warmth, ease. The kind of dreams that did not need interpretation. Clocks continued to function. Planes continued their paths. Hospitals continued their work. The world did not stop being responsible. It just stopped being loud. At some point, no one could say, when the night crossed the threshold. This was not a measurable moment. No device recorded it. No official organization announced it. But the world reached a depth of quiet it had not known in a very long time. In Elias's town, the snow slowed further. Flakes fell wider apart, as though they were taking turns. The streetlights glowed evenly, their halos no longer overlapping. The clock tower bell did not ring on the hour. It was meant to. But the bell remained still, not broken. Resting. Elias noticed this only vaguely. Half asleep on his couch, he smiled faintly, without knowing why. This was the night the world decided without discussion, without planning to be quiet. And it was only just beginning. As the night deepened, the quiet spread not outward, but inward. It slipped beneath doors and into rooms. It rested on shoulders. It settled behind eyes. The world did not fall asleep all at once. Instead, it entered a shared state of softness, as though every place had agreed to lower its voice at the same time. In the small town where Elias lived, the snow continued falling, though it seemed to have learned something new. The flakes drifted more slowly now, with more space between them, as if they were careful not to interrupt one another. The street no longer looked like a place people passed through. It looked like a place that simply existed. Elias shifted on the couch, pulling a blanket over himself. He did not fully wake, nor did he fall fully asleep. He hovered in that quiet middle space where thoughts loosen and stop demanding to be finished. His mind did not replay the day. It did not plan the next one. It rested in the present, which felt unusually complete. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator hummed softly, then stopped. It would start again later. For now, it paused. The silence accepted it without comment. Across the street, a neighbor stood by their window, holding a mug with both hands. Steam rose and disappeared quickly into the room's warmth. They watched the snow without counting the flakes or wondering how long it would last. They felt no pressure to do anything else. In the cafe that had closed hours earlier, the woman turned off the lights and stepped outside. She locked the door slowly, not because she was tired, but because moving quickly felt out of place. She paused on the sidewalk and looked up at the sky. It seemed larger than usual. The clouds were thin and stretched wide, leaving spaces where stars could rest without shining too brightly. Even the sky appeared to be participating in the quiet, offering openness rather than spectacle. Far from this town, in places where snow did not fall, the night expressed itself differently. In a coastal city, waves reached the shore with less force, rolling in wide, shallow arcs instead of sharp breaks. The sound of the water softened into a steady hush that felt less like noise and more like breathing. On a long highway, cutting through open land, a truck slowed slightly, its driver unaware that he had eased off the accelerator. The road ahead felt calm, unpressured. The destination could wait. In our hospital machines continued their careful work. Nurses moved with steady focus. The quiet did not interrupt responsibility. It supported it. The absence of extra noise made attention clearer, movements gentler. In an apartment high above a city, a child stirred and then settled without crying. The room felt safe enough without explanation. This was not a night of miracles, Nothing extraordinary happened, and that was precisely what made it remarkable. As the world continued to soften, the quiet reached its deepest point. There was no marker for it, no bell, no time stamp, no announcement. It simply arrived when the last unnecessary sound let go. In Elias's town, the clock tower reached the hour. The hands moved. The bell did not ring. It was not broken. It was not silenced by force. It simply chose not to speak. The sound remained inside the metal, resting. That was when the night reached its fullest stillness. At that depth, the quiet was no longer something you noticed. It became something you were inside of, like water holding a swimmer without resistance. In houses across the town, people paused in small, unplanned ways. A book lay open, unread for several minutes. A cup rested untouched on a table. A pen hovered above paper, then lowered gently. No one felt interrupted. They felt complete. Elias opened his eyes briefly. The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the streetlight outside. Snowlight reflected softly against the ceiling. He listened. There was nothing, not even the faint sounds he usually expected at night. The house felt sealed, not trapped, but protected. He felt something unfamiliar but welcome, a sense that nothing was required of him. No response, no decision, no improvement. Just rest. He closed his eyes again, and his breathing deepened, sinking with nothing in particular. Elsewhere, a woman in another country lay awake and realized she was not anxious. This surprised her. She searched briefly for a reason, then stopped. The feeling did not need justification. In a village where nights were usually filled with insects, the buzzing softening into long pauses between sounds. The spaces between noises felt intentional, as though the night were arranging them carefully. In a forest, animals moved with slower precision. No alarms were raised. No urgency passed through the trees. The night felt safe enough to remain quiet. Across oceans, across continents, across places that did not know one another, the world shared the same decision without ever discussing it. To be quiet, not silent, just quiet enough. At the deepest point of the night, something subtle happened. Not an action, but an understanding. The world realized it did not need to be loud to exist. That constant motion was not the same as mania. That rest was not wasted time. This understanding did not arrive as a thought. It arrived as a feeling, woven into the atmosphere, absorbed without effort. And then very slowly the night began to ease. Not end, ease. The quiet did not shatter. It did not lift abruptly. It loosened its grip, like hands unclasping after holding something gently for a long time. In Elias's town, the snow began to fall slightly faster, again not fast, just familiar. The flakes no longer waited so long between one another. A breeze passed through the street, careful and mild. It brushed the trees without shaking them. Somewhere, a floorboard creaked softly. The sound felt allowed. Elias shifted beneath a blanket and stretched half awake. His body felt lighter than it had in weeks, as though the night had done something kind to it without asking permission. In the cafe, the woman returned home and placed her keys in a bowl. They made a small sound when they touched. She smiled. The world had not forbidden sound. It had simply reminded it to be gentle. The clock tower bell remained silent through the next hour, but the mechanism hummed faintly now, warming back into its usual rhythm. In distant places, birds shifted on branches, not yet singing, but preparing. The sky lightened imperceptibly at its edges, thinning the dark. Morning did not rush in. It waited its turn. By the time the horizon hinted at light, the quiet had settled into a new place, not the deep stillness of the night, but a lasting calm that lingered beneath everything else. People would wake soon. Cities would move again. Schedules would resume, but something would be different. Not obvious, not dramatic, just present. Elias woke, fully as dawn approached. He sat up on the couch, surprised by how rested he felt. His joints did not ache. His thoughts did not scatter. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out. The town was unchanged, and yet it felt renewed. Snow rested neatly on every surface. The street was empty, but welcoming. The light held warmth even before the sun appeared. Elias exhaled slowly. "Good," he murmured, though he could not say why. Across the world, others would feel it too in small, quiet ways. A little more patience. A softer reaction, a deeper breath. Before speaking, no one would trace it back to this night. There would be no headlines, no historical markers, no official recognition. But the night would remain, stored in the spaces between moments, remembered not as an event, but as a feeling. The night the world decided to be quiet did not change history. It changed tone. And sometimes, that is enough. The sun rose gently. The clocks continued. The world moved on, but beneath it all, the quiet stayed ready to return whenever it was invited.